Hello, and I'm so glad that you've joined us for another brief episode on prayer. We began last week looking at Nehemiah's exclamatory prayer, and I want to encourage you to go back and read the first two chapters of the book of Nehemiah in the Old Testament and be familiar with this context as we consider this short prayer of Nehemiah over the next several weeks. But the scripture tells us in Nehemiah 2:4, Nehemiah is before the king. The king has asked him why his countenance is fallen, why he is sad. And Nehemiah, according to Nehemiah chapter 2 verse 4, says, So I prayed to the God of heaven. When you consider the timing of Nehemiah's prayer, this must have been a very, very short prayer because it occurred in that brief pause between the question of the king and then Nehemiah's response and answer to the king. And short though it must have been, this exclamatory prayer by Nehemiah was sufficient for God to hear and for God to give Nehemiah wisdom in his answer to the king. This is very instructive for us. Our prayer life should be such that we can breathe a prayer in just a moment of time and expect God to both hear and answer. Secondly, notice that Nehemiah found time to pray even though his heart was deeply troubled for Jerusalem, and he was, as he tells us in the text, very much afraid. Nehemiah was afraid and he was troubled. How often do we forget to pray when we are vexed in our hearts and afraid because of our circumstances? This was not the case with Nehemiah. Nehemiah felt like his fear and his vexation was a cause for prayer, however brief that prayer might be. No doubt his exclamatory prayer happened because he was a man accustomed to prayer in all seasons and all occasions. The lesson here being, beloved, is that when we are accustomed to praying at all times, then we will pray even when we are vexed in heart, even when we're afraid because of our circumstances. Prayer will be our heartbeat Godward. Thirdly, I want you to notice Nehemiah's sanctified caution. Now, when you think about the position Nehemiah was in, no doubt he was very eager to respond to and enlist the aid that was being offered by King Artaxerxes, because this had been the burning desire of his heart for months. Nevertheless, he was not hasty in his response. He withdrew for a moment and conferred with the King of Glory before he answered the King of Persia. How instructive is that? Beloved, a holy caution will cause us to pray more quickly than we answer. And fourthly, is it not striking that Nehemiah prayed even though he had already been praying for months? How many of you would have jumped at the offer of the king without hesitation, thinking, well, here's the answer to my diligent prayer, my tears, my sorrowing before the Lord, so let's not look a gift horse in the mouth? Yeah, me too. Not so with Nehemiah. Nehemiah offered one final petition, a short exclamatory prayer to the God of heaven. And with blazing speed, the King of Glory gave Nehemiah the words to say to the King of Persia. How instructive this exclamatory prayer of Nehemiah. God bless you, and thank you for joining us again.